Hello. Okay, so kind of want to continue the previous thought. So maybe, um, well, I'll just summarize the previous thought. When we try to, or I will just speak for myself. Uh, uh, because I try to resist certain traits and states within myself, I actually end up um, achieving the opposite in terms of not the stereotypical, oh, you don't like something, therefore you will get it. Um, I don't think it works like that. I don't think it's one of those uh karma or whatever how people with magic thinking would describe it. It's more that if there is something that you don't like, there's a systemic reason for you to even um have an opinion on it. You're not gonna have a negative opinion about something you don't even have a disposition towards. Um, or at least not one that is highly present in your like consciousness, not something that you're gonna think a lot about. For example, what's your opinion on the fact that leprechauns in are in Antarctic or some shit? Like, you're not gonna have an opinion because it's just something you haven't thought about, right? So for you to have an opinion on something, you had to have thought about something, and we tend to think about things that are close to us, right? So in that sense, whatever, I don't need to explain this. So I have noticed that me trying to resist certain states or not accepting certain parts of myself, um, yes, that shifts who I am as a person, but rejecting certain states and releases does not actually yield a result of changing the output. And the reason why I do that, I think, is because I try to control and dominate all parts of life that I can. And that comes from lack of trust in own um in a natural progression in the direction that I wanted to progress. In simple words, I don't feel in control enough, therefore I try to exert more control. But attempting to exert the control um, isn't yielding anything, which could be because I'm trying to approach it from the wrong direction. Maybe real change um, is not a result of controlling something into its shape, but changing its genetic shape. What I mean by that is, for example, let's say you have a a square or something, or okay, even easier, elastic band, right? Imagine you have an elastic band, right? And an elastic band, its natural shape is gonna be a circle, most likely, right? If you didn't do anything to pre-deform it or anything, it's gonna be a perfect circle, or at least that's what it's gonna tend towards if its ends are just connected. If you try to stretch it, if you try to deform it and make it into something else, uh, the moment you let go, it will go back to its original shape. Uh, So real change is occurred not by exerting force on something and hoping that it will change shape, because that doesn't change its genetic shape. Its genetic shape is still going to be a circle. It has no reason to stop being a circle just because it got stretched a bit. Yes, you can deform it or, push it beyond the elastic limit or whatever, and yes, maybe that will break it. But then that breaks the elastic band, uh, and you lose the ability to shape it repeatedly. Let's say, which is worse because it means that you can only deform yourself once, and then you're forever deformed, and you can't. What if you want to go back to circle? You can't, right? It will mean that you'll have to redeform yourself even again, and whatever you get into other complications. That might have been too like close to. That might have been too literal, but it matches how it plays out in reality, I think. So, how should I say? The need to deform it comes from a realization that its genetic shape does not match you. Your need to deform yourself and push yourself comes from an understanding that you are not who you want to be, or it comes from lack of trust in your ability to change and you're trying to force it. And what if real change? What if we completely didn't even try to deform it at all? We didn't try to stretch it in any way. And we just instead focused on the things that um, make our genetic shape. What if instead of trying to stretch myself into being an oval, address my, how should I say, I don't know, underlying beliefs or whatever that uh, are preventing me from being an oval. And over time, I will naturally gravitate towards this new shape. For example, uh, let's do a random chain of um, cause and shape effect. So let's say you have something like enjoys uh, playing piano, right? And then we have another one who doesn't enjoy, right? We have two alternatives, two underlying kind of approaches to something, right? So someone enjoys doing it and someone doesn't enjoy doing it. And you try to make the person who doesn't enjoy playing the piano into the best pianist, and You try to make the person who enjoys playing piano into the best pianist. You're gonna have different results. Even if you were to apply zero effort, zero pressure, and just leave them in the same room with a piano, uh, to get the person who doesn't like playing it to play the piano, you'll need to deform him. You'll need to force him into that behavior. To get someone who enjoys doing it, they can do so naturally. They can do so genetically, as in their system is already configured in such a way, or their mind, their beliefs are configured in such a way that it doesn't take effort. And the thing about things that don't take effort is that they always win in the long run. If you have to put in effort non-stop into something to maintain it, and I mean specifically the like willpower type of effort, like conscious effort, then it will deteriorate in the long run, guaranteed. Um, so there's no point fighting for it. It's like you want to stop being a gambling addict or something, for example, right? You shouldn't fight it on a level of I want to gamble. No, I must not. I must not gamble. Like if you have someone who enjoys playing the piano and you try to stop him and you try to make him not play the piano, that's going to take effort. And in the long run, that's not going to be effective. You're not gonna be able to stop them. Unless you take away their enjoyment from being the piano. Give them some traumatic memories or some shit. That could work, right? So that's what I mean by genetic change. Changing at your heart, and that changes the kind of output that you create based on you changing who you are. So when I am trying to force myself into something, it is always um, because I realize that my current genetic makeup does not match what I want it to be. For example, I have spent really long time playing Counter-Strike and grinding that. I have put ridiculous amount of effort into that game. I've trained for a ridiculous amounts of hours. To this day, I haven't played it much for the last like 4 years or something. 3 years? No, 2 years. 2.5 years. I've barely touched it, and I have more hours than some professional players. And ones that already retired. So I've played that, and what was the mental framing behind that? I realized that I wasn't made of the material that I needed. Well, initially I was improving very quickly and everything was going perfectly because I had the good genetic makeup initially. Then I had some events happen which shifted my genetic makeup, and I went into the direction of trying to compensate for my weaknesses by a crazy amount of effort. I was like, well, if I just try harder than everyone else, then I should win. Um, I was completely wrong for thinking that way, but um, it taught me a valuable lesson now. There is no point. Um, well, no, I don't need to word it that way, but why did I bring up Counter Strike? I don't remember. My memory is fucked. Enjoys playing piano, doesn't enjoy. So, um, I had some core genetic issues that I was trying to compensate for with ridiculous amount of effort. And the reason I was trying to do it that way is because I was not um, aware, or I wasn't versed well enough to be able to know how to make genetic changes. I wasn't, I didn't know the things that I do now, and even now I think it's fairly challenging. I'm still trying to understand these things better. But back then I had completely no clue. And when you have no clue and no real indicators of real genetic change, and you really want something, then you're left, it's just logical that your alternative is like to just try to force it out of yourself. And it's like, imagine you have a kid, but you really, 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 really need him to play the piano. It doesn't matter if he enjoys it or not. Then I'm gonna force him. Basically, that's what I was doing to myself. So, how does that apply to what I've realized earlier today? Um, the reason I feel so tired is because I am not living in sync with my genetic state. I am constantly exerting energy to push myself to be better in certain ways that I am not, because I'm not satisfied with what I am. And for example, as I said earlier, I'm very tense. I'm never relaxed. I'm almost always focused on what's the next thing, how do I do this better? Even in moments where I'm completely, "Ugh, I can't be bothered to do anything, I'm still, even today, for example, today, right now, I feel like shit. I feel like doing nothing. But even right now, I'm sitting and I'm brainstorming, what am I doing wrong? How can I do it better? How do I utilize the resources that are available to me? Um, and those are all forms of, I mean, part of it is not just genetic. Um, I've kind of morphed into this kind of person over the last few years, where I'm, how should I say, very, I don't know. I don't know if result oriented is the right word, but I'm always thinking, maybe I was always like this. It just, I became even more, more so. Whatever. Um, okay, so details aside, the point I was trying to make is, okay, I will give an example of where I resist my genetic change. For example, this song. The, like, this is the kind of music I actually think is the closest to, um, or how should I say, it's the closest in terms of what is near to me on a, like a, personal level, like what atmosphere matches me, right? So it's like some doomer shit, some feeling sad shit, right? It's not really sad song, but it's more like off that tone, right? And how would I treat that, for example? I would reject that music because I felt that it would have a wrong influence on me, and that it was shaping me to be, um, or reinforcing certain um, ways of being. So I was actively trying to regulate and police what kind of things I think about, what kind of things I do, to not include the self bitching, the things that I thought that were making me weak. Except for if you are that person genetically, you don't have to. You just listen to what the fuck you like. What the fuck is the nearest to? Why the fuck would you need to self police? Right? And if the fact that I need to self police means that genetically I'm not there yet, and policing isn't going to help it, it's only going to suppress my sense of self and um, waste resources because you're resisting with yourself. Imagine you're a gambling addict and you really need to spin for whatever reason. It's like, oh, I need to spin right now. Put everything on greed. For you to not do that, that is going to cost energy. The rubber band wants to be a circle and you're pulling on it and it's pulling back. But that rubber band is you, who you are, and you're trying to stretch yourself. And that rubber band is very strong. Uh, well, okay, I'm not gonna. Maybe in the next video I will try to break down the rubber band thing because it's a new concept. But okay, policing yourself, complete scam. Um, what is the alternative? How do you actually achieve change? Address the parent beliefs. For example, you have two people. One enjoys piano, one doesn't enjoy piano. Instead of forcing one on this level, all you need to go is go one level above and look at the reasoning behind that, and then um, go from there. For example, um, and this is something that occurs a lot when I speak to people, which is why I go in these loops and I start explaining really a lot of things that I think are the basis before you speak to someone. Because what's the point of speaking to someone if they don't even understand anything? Whatever. This applies a lot when you're speaking to someone, but I will stick with the piano context. So there's someone who enjoys playing piano and there's someone who doesn't enjoy. And if you look at something that's like one person sees something entertaining in the piano and the other doesn't. And it's a matter maybe of, I don't know, you could do a history lesson on piano players. And maybe if you explain the whole culture on pianos, if you explain the historical significance, if you explained the types of songs or music that they're able to produce, maybe the person who doesn't have an interest will organically generate an interest. Maybe if you convey the idea in an interesting, in an appealing enough way, they will naturally gravitate towards that. For example, if you, for example, a person like me, how do you appeal to someone like me? Let's say I don't want to play a piano. Um, how would you appeal to that? You'll start breaking down all the mechanical aspects of playing the piano, and then uh, explain it in a very like simple, like to start way, and then I'll actually be entertained. I'll be interested. I'll be engaged. I'll start thinking, oh damn, I can within a couple of minutes produce something like that already. Damn, that sounds kind of fun to play around with. And if you give me that kind of the context that I need to be able to engage in that way with it, then yes, you have won me over. I will be interested. So a lot of the time, the things that shape whether we want something or that shape our genetics on a particular issue are based on context. So you could just reveal certain context and that will change how they view it. And okay, so um, okay, that's explained. So going further, what do I stop doing and what do I start doing? Stop any form of policing. Just let go of the reins. Let go of control. You don't need to control yourself. You just need to be. What do I mean by that? As in, for example, let's say I want it to be able to play piano, right? And I am finding that I don't enjoy playing piano. There is no point putting in any effort trying to play the piano if I don't enjoy it. That should be the first um, thing that you should see. Maybe explore for context to see if there's something that could allow me to enjoy it or engage with it in a way that I would enjoy. And mm, so that would be by proxy of just by just changing environment. Okay, what about we go a step deeper? What about intrinsic change? Um, maybe I could watch a few pianists. Maybe I'll get inspired. Maybe I could. What else could I do? Learn some basic theory such that it becomes really simple to do it, but learn it in like a fun way. Or maybe I could theory craft what things I could do once I do learn it, or something like that. Um, the possibilities are endless and extremely creative. They're they can be anything, case by case basis. How should I say? To play the piano, I need to become the person who wants to play the piano. And that's not achieved by forcing yourself to be that person. That's achieved by genuinely, like for real, uh, seeing the appeal in being that person. And not like a surface level. Ah, if I was a piano person, I would be rich. But a genuine, like, like a closer intertwined way. Like a genuine way, I guess. I have no other words. Like in a genuine way, not a commercial oriented. And okay, and another point, maybe this whole like trying to stretch yourself to be a certain person or whatever, potentially spending all that energy on that is actually stunting your growth because under high stress, maybe it's harder to do real or uh, genetic change. As in, some genetic change will happen because of the stress, but not in all cases. Maybe in some cases it has a opposite effect. For example, if I am forcing you to play the piano every single day, it's going to be harder for you to go from enjoying it, from not enjoying it, to enjoying it, because you're being forced to play it every single day. You have a negative association from being forced to do something. Um, so I mean it in that sense. By trying to be something, you actually distance it from yourself because you begin to associate it with the action of trying to be, not being. Those are completely different things. This whole idea, fake it till you make it, is entirely false. You can't, because they approach the problem from two different, uh, from completely opposite directions. And for example, imagine I was um, a scammer or something, right? And I wanted to pretend to have a certain skill that I don't possess. I wanted to pretend that I can play the piano, right? And I was like, haha, look at me, I'm playing a piano. Being a scammer is going to be my genetics, not being the piano player. I'm going to get better at convincing people that I'm a piano player, sure, but I will not be able to compete with a real piano player in terms of output. Maybe I will be able to compete with them in terms of publicity or whatever. Maybe I'm really good at presenting myself. And that's very prevalent in society, by the way, unfortunately, in almost all disciplines. But in terms of actual output, it just doesn't beat being a real piano player. Like, because one is going to have the mode of engagement of, playing piano and actually improving and learning the technical things, and the other is going to have the engagement of imitating competence. And those are not the same. The art of imitating and the art of mastering are not the same art. Okay, distinction is made. So, what is the kind of broad lesson for me from this? It's that you should reflect on yourself, but to be yourself. Be yourself as much as possible. As uh, bad as that may be in some aspects. If you're a gambling addict, go gamble. If you're a fucking crack cocaine addict, go do crack cocaine. Uh, because that's who you are, and there's no point resisting that. It's just completely not effective. Real change comes from genetic change, and genetic change occurs in a way more organic way. It occurs as a result to real internal change. And that comes from shift in your worldview or shift in your beliefs or shift in the context that you sample when making your decisions things like that. So, and now that I'm reflecting, I've had many different periods that have shifted me dramatically in different directions. And now, as I'm reflecting on each one of them, the changes were like the biggest changes that stuck the most were basically instant. As in, I changed from a person who enjoys playing piano to who doesn't enjoy in immediately with very little effort. And it was just a result of either some revelation or some realization or some extra context being thrown my way. But it changed me immediately. And then that changed uh, how I engaged with things around me. And then that changed, that caused a whole chain of reactions based on those core changes. So, okay, I feel like I'm interrupting myself as I'm trying to. Well, not really interrupting, I'm just adding more clarity into it. But uh, back to the summary. The lesson for me is to relinquish control over your actions. Allow yourself to be yourself at any moment, and instead seek context. Seek, uh, yeah, literally just context. That's literally I think, the driving factor. Reflection and context. Those are the only two. And never go against who you are. If you need to use willpower um, excessively, or it feels like you're forcing yourself to be something, admit reality. You're just not that person who you want to be. So why force yourself to be that person? You're never going to become that person by faking it. It's like this idea of makeup or something. Like, yeah, you can try to fight the reality that you're aging and becoming more and more wrinkly, or you're not as attractive as you thought or as you would have wanted to be. But the more you uh, fight it, it's not going to bring you closer to that new reality. You're just going to get more and more deluded. You're just going to get more and more trapped in those behaviors. So let go. There's a difference, but how should I say? Let's say on a conscious level, you understand that you shouldn't do something. For example, you on a conscious level, you're like, "Fuck, I'm losing so much money on gambling. I should stop gambling." Um, but your heart is not in sync with that. If you still want to put everything on green, uh, then admit that you're a gambler. Take the L. Like, if you were really ready for change, it doesn't feel like you're fighting against yourself. Real change doesn't feel like that. Real change feels like you just don't want to gamble anymore. That is what genetic change looks like. You just were something and then you're no longer that something. Like there's a lot of things I was before and I'm not now. And even if I try to replicate them, I can't. For example, I used to be this very um, playful person, and I used to like to. Um, there were some manners of speech that I used, and um, just to create a playful environment to joke with people. I would, for example, I would always write things like "woo woo" or whatever. I would always act in that kind of cute and wholesome way, uh, or is in a soft way, at least with people that I liked. I tried to, or someone was who was exactly like I was in the past was saying like, "Oh my God, you're too serious," and kind of invited me into this form of interaction, and that would have been kind of a normal interaction for me in the past. I fucking cringed so hard. I just couldn't. Like it was so cringe. It was so alien to me. And bear in mind, this is like, I shit you not, probably like only 3 years ago, I would have been the guy who acts this way all the time with everyone because he finds it funny. To a point where now, for me to act like this, it takes effort. Don't become this fucking guy who stops gambling by, oh, I, by the willpower, I really, really try really hard and I'm really, really not gambling. Versus the guy who just fucking finds gambling cringe. That's what real change looks like. Real genetic change. And that goes down to all the habits, all the things that you do. Instead of trying to imitate the traits of other people, well, I want to comment on another thing. If your strategy is to try to imitate or copy the behaviors that you think are optimal, even if that means overriding your natural responses, you will never be happy because that's a never ending road. You will always find something to be better, and you will never get to experience being yourself. Ever. Imagine living your whole life like this, where you were always at odds with yourself and you were never free. To me, that is even this realization is probably causing some genetic changes within me. Like me seeing it that way through that framing is going to change and make me not want to do the things I was doing before. And I'm not gonna need to like force myself to stop doing those things. I'm just going to now, with this new framing, not even want to do them in the first place. So, to summarize for the third time, instead of focusing on copying or artificial change, as I'm gonna call it now, uh, or forced or forcing yourself into some shape. You should accept and embrace who you are now. And based off of who you are now, then you could maybe shape yourself by reviewing different context. For example, uh, a lot of people have this fantasy about I'm gonna start working out. I'm gonna get in crazy shape. I'm gonna grind and work hard just in 3 months, just in 3 months, just in 3 months. Or I'm doing it right now. Look how hard I'm working. If you were to have like a real conversation with yourself and really reflect on why you need uh on your values, on who you are, if you were to address that first, you would maybe get to a point where you just naturally want to do the work. You will become him, as they say, but you will never become him by directly forcing yourself to do the work. You don't become him by listening to his music playlist. You don't become him by copying his, by reading his book and copying his habits. You become him by working with who you are now and creating an appealing image to who you are now, um, to take on those actions. For example, let's say I have a very simple uh, example. Okay, let's stick with the piano. Even though I know nothing about playing piano. Uh, let's say there's a way you like to play the piano and you're hitting the keys in a certain way, and then someone was to show you, look, if you hit it this way, then your fingers don't hurt as much. And I'm like, wow. So if I just make this small change, then I get to have a better experience by playing the piano. Like that is an appealing organic change. Um, or at least that formulation of it makes it appealing. I could present exactly the same change and be like, hey, you have the wrong technique. Start doing this. You're not appealing to your current self. This whole idea that your current self needs to kill himself for your future self is fundamentally flawed. Real change occurs not by killing your current self, it's by doing what appeals to your current self. All changes happen in sync with self, not by rejecting and contrasting your current self. Whatever your current self is right now, that's who you're convincing. And if you can't convince them, then why the fuck are you even. Like, if you can't even convince yourself why something is beneficial, then maybe it's probably not beneficial enough for you to even do it. Then maybe you need to reflect on why the fuck you're even trying to do something that is so meaningless that you can't even convince yourself of its utility and value. For example, um, I have I don't experience any pain in my fingers when I'm playing piano, and I don't experience any issues. And then someone's like, "Well, if you were to uh play this way, then you would not feel pain in your fingers." Is there any delta in that for me? Absolutely zero delta. Therefore, there's no incentive to change. Or if someone says, if you just start playing in this way, then you will be a better pianist eventually. And maybe that might be true. But if the idea of being a better pianist eventually does not appeal to my current, like if doing that new technique just sounds boring and ass, and I'm just trying to appeal to my future self. Imagine how much it's like. I've had this type of autism in so many ways. Let me just do these things this obscure, hard way that makes me want to kill myself. By the way, I do that basically with everything. And uh, then when I reach perfection, then it's going to be objectively better. No, try to enjoy every step of the way. Because if you can't enjoy it one step at a time, you can't justify it, then those steps aren't going to sustain themselves. Instead of climbing a staircase, you're going to be climbing a fucking 6 foot wall. Because you're going to need to climb all of them at once. Because at no point are you enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying it, then it's going to be a battle to hold it, if that makes sense. Imagine if let's say you're trying to deform an elastic band, right? Again, and you're trying to get it from to this point. If you and let's cut it up in stages like this, and its initial stage it stretches to here, and its second stage it stretches to here, third stage it stretches to here, right? Let's say you are currently in the first stage. The moment you find an appealing like offer and you achieve genetic change as you're stretching like to second stage, then it ceases to take up any effort. You by default become uh you take this shape, which means to go from this shape to the third shape will take you the same amount of effort that it took you to go from the first to second. But going from first shape and just trying to force yourself to go to perfection to the third shape will take a tremendous effort. Uh, and if you were to think about it as, let's say you have this rubber band, imagine it's super, super, super hard to pull, super high tension required or something, and you try to pull it this far, it's going to take so much more energy than stretching an elastic band that is already this shape to the same spot. Does that make sense? That's what I mean by um, it's going to require a completely different level of strength. And bear in mind that stretching is also your stretching your own fucking psyche. That's going to cause tremendous stress onto you. And if you were to adopt that model, you might potentially be playing around with breaking yourself, which is basically what I did. So you risk a lot more by reaching far instead of changing in steps. Okay, what do I mean by in practice? Let's say in I have a really like dramatically different vision of where I want to be, right? And the person who I am now is rejecting that completely. All I need to do is just become someone a little bit different who is rejecting it a little bit less, and then become someone a little bit different, but within reach of the first iteration, or within reach of the previous iteration, such that I'm not feeling stress from overstretching myself. I'm just stepping within my boundaries, or within my bounds, and or within my capabilities, and I'm just organically shifting. And this kind of natural change will be much more sustainable because if at any point, for whatever reason, I were to stop and relapse, then I would only relapse to the previous stage. I wouldn't relapse back to zero. If you're relapsing back to zero, it means you didn't achieve organic change. if you're going in circles, if you're forever going in these cycles, uh, like what I described in the previous explanation, where I have my manic periods and then I have my fucking um depression periods or whatever, and then I'm just forever moving between these cycles. That means I'm not achieving organic change, which in other words means that I'm not making any long-term progress. I'm just stuck in the same spot. I will make another example. Imagine you're trying to study math and you want to get to pre-grad level or something, right? Imagine you have zero math knowledge. You're I don't know, you skipped all your classes or something, right? You're not even high school level. And you were to start immediately trying to solve math equations of pre-grad level. You just wouldn't have the resources to be able to learn. You will have so many concepts that are prerequisite to learning the concept that you would need that it would be impossible for you to benefit from attempting questions that are that hard. It might even have a negative effect. Doing something that is too difficult, such that uh, you need to understand how our brains work. Literally, our brains are fucking synapses that connect fucking little like pathways. Like our brains, if I were to make a diagram, look something like da da da. This is not accurately, this is not scientifically accurate. Please don't cancel me or whatever. But the concept still stands. Well, actually, conceptually, it's accurate enough. Um, you have pathways that form and they relate to each other. For example, if you have a certain memory, you might remember it in connection with a certain emotion. So, and when you think of that emotion, it might bring up some memories, and there's such things as state-dependent memory. I recommend you read about that. That'll give you a lot of insights. Um, Things in our brains are connected and built like little bridges, like they're built step by step. And the more well-defined, well-reinforced nodes there are that you're building from. For example, let's say you are an expert pianist, right? Because we're sticking with piano. And I were to try to explain some programming concept to you, and you have zero understanding of programming. If I were to explain it to you in uh, the way I would explain it to a programmer, it would just be alien to you. It will look like I'm trying to explain something completely foreign to you, and it will take you really a lot of effort to try to build a bridge to this understanding. But then, if I were to take that same concept, and I had good enough understanding of piano to explain it, I could and explain it using piano terms, and you're already a master pianist. You would be like, oh, so when you do an if statement, it's the same as a reaction to when you do some note in reaction to another note, or something like that. If you were to express it using context that is accessible and is local, or that is already reinforced, then it will be much easier to reach the and retain the information. So the closer something is to who you are now, the more permanent and consistent and effective the learning process is. And trying to reach too far, You're just not going to have, you know, the extra materials that y let's say you have this path, then yeah, go reach. Uh, but if you don't have this path, then you're being too ambitious. Go build the path first and then grab what's on the other end. You can't grab something on the other end and hope that you build the path while you do it. That's going to take way longer compared to building the path first. Um, yeah. So, if I were to summarize, be yourself. Do not try to force yourself or stretch yourself in any way. Just be authentic to your current self. And if you are trying to change and you strive for change, appeal to your current self. Work with your current self. Never uh do the never do something that goes against your current self. All change should always be uh at every step of the way uh in sync with the interests of who you are now, not who you want to be. You need to find, you need to negotiate something that you conscious, that your current self is going to be happy and thrilled about, because then he is going to adopt to those changes and he's going to internalize those changes and he's going to reinforce those changes, making them permanent. If you fail to do so, then you will be forever at odds with yourself. You will never be happy. Your life will be shit. And you will not even get the result because you will be stuck like I have been stuck, forever going in circles. Okay, I think I've explained the concept really well, actually. Good job, me. Ciao.